Good morning everyone and welcome to Day Talk. Today we will be discussing a rather controversial topic, which is tightly associated with our dependency on fossil fuels. We all remember the environmental disaster that occurred in 2010. Here we see the Deepwater Horizon oil well in the Gulf of Mexico. Although this may have been the biggest oil spill to date, there have still been countless oil contaminations in the past. These oil spills are a harsh reminder that crude oil has unforgiving consequences on animal life and our environment if it is not responsibly regulated. So first, what exactly is crude oil? The picture on the screen behind me shows the main constituents of crude oil, or petroleum. All of these organic compounds consist exclusively of carbon and hydrogen, and hence are called hydrocarbons. These are saturated hydrocarbons, and include alkanes like methane, propane and butane, but also longer alkanes such as pristane and hexadecane. Other saturated compounds contain rings of carbon in their structure and are called cycloalkanes. Finally, they are also the unsaturated hydrocarbons. These compounds have ring-like structures and contain double or triple bonds. Typical unsaturated hydrocarbons found in petroleum are benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. These are better known as BTEX and are considered to be extremely detrimental to our environment. So now, to the question at hand, how do we deal with hydrocarbon contamination? And are there efficient rehabilitation techniques available? Well, there are physical treatments. However, they can be energy-intensive or environmentally damaging. These include burning, soaking up, spinning out, or breaking it down using dispersants. Luckily, humans are not the only ones up to the task. Microorganisms can play a significant role as well. To help us get to grips with the concepts of hydrocarbon biodegradation, we've invited a very special guest to join us today. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Miss Marinabacter hydrocarbonoclasticus. So, Miss Marinabacter hydrocarbonoclasticus.
Please call me Martha.
All right, Martha. Tell us, why are you here?
Well, the abundance of hydrocarbons in our biosphere should give you some insight as to why we microorganisms exist. You see, we hydrocarbon degraders have evolved a lovely little trick that allows us to utilize hydrocarbons as sources of energy and biomass. It is these adaptations that give us an advantage to survive.
But hang on, Martha, I thought you were an anaerobe. How are you able to join us here in the show today?
Oh, Mr. White, I am a non-obligatory anaerobe, meaning I prefer to live in the absence of oxygen. However, I can survive with oxygen around. This is how I can sit here today. As for my lineage, I belong to a larger family of proteobacteria that live in the sea. My species carries the name of Hydrocarbonoclasticus, which directly translated means hydrocarbon dismantling. My family members and myself love to degrade hydrocarbons like long-chain alkanes as well as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons.
If I may stop you right there, Martha, you appear to have quite the extensive family tree. We could spend quite some time on it. However, I would like to stay on topic.
Of course, Mr. White.
Thank you. We know that hydrocarbons react with oxygen under the correct catalysis. However, these compounds are still insoluble and hard to degrade. This is why they pose such an environmental hazard. Could you please explain how you manage to metabolize hydrocarbons under anaerobic conditions?
Of course. Yet it is important to note that there is no biochemical agent that has the same oxidative properties as an oxygen species. Therefore, the mechanisms anaerobes use are completely different to those of aerobic bacteria. We anaerobes have evolved to use nitrate, ferric iron and sulfate as terminal electron acceptors for anaerobic hydrocarbon respiration. This allows us to activate the hydrocarbons and in turn oxidize them into compounds that we can use to grow. We also gain a significant advantage from living in syntrophic co-cultures with other anaerobes. You know what we bacteria say? A friend in need is a friend indeed, but a friend who can help feed is better.
I see, that is very interesting. Now here is a question. Are you able to sustain yourself on just hydrocarbons alone?
Yes. However, we gain little energy from the overall reactions of hydrocarbon degradation. For this reason we cannot dissipate much energy for hydrocarbon activation. We microbes have overcome this through the use of crucial terminal electron acceptors to catalyze the reaction. If we look here, under conditions of nitrate reduction, ferric iron reduction and sulfate reduction, we see that hydrocarbon oxidation is a favorable process, meaning that hydrocarbons can be used for microbial energy conversion. However, the true activities under natural conditions may lead to a completely different value. There are several factors that can influence the rate of hydrocarbon mineralization. These include the abundance of relevant microbes, the availability of hydrocarbons via diffusion, the energetics and kinetics of the initial hydrocarbon activating reaction, and the efficiency of subsequent reactions leading to CO2 formation.
That's a very clear explanation, Martha. Could you tell us which terminal electron acceptor you use to help you catalyze hydrocarbons?
Of course. I prefer to use the nitrates.
Why is that?
Well, because they are cheaper than the day rates.
You are a funny one, Martha. We certainly learnt a lot about your family and your mechanisms for hydrocarbon metabolism. We would like to thank you for all your knowledge on the subject.
It was my pleasure, Mr. White. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, keeping on track with today's program, we will now address key microbial techniques that can help us rehabilitate areas contaminated with hydrocarbons. To help us understand some of the processes out there, we have invited one of Martha's friends, an expert in the field of applied microbial community engineering. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you all Mr. D-sulfonimir Limicola, or, as his friends call him, Dave. Hang on a moment, we seem to have some technical difficulties.
Good morning, Mr. White, and thank you for having me on your show. Firstly, let me apologize for not being able to make it to your studio.
Not a problem. I hear you have been quite busy recently.
That's right. We don't know the meaning of a holiday. All work and no play. You see, we anaerobic bacteria are among the most unhealthy bacteria, as we are too busy to do any aerobic exercise.
Ha ha, very witty of you, Dave.
Thanks. Back to the topic at hand. Microbial community engineering has a significant role to play in the rehabilitation of sites contaminated with hydrocarbons. Let me first introduce natural attenuation. Natural attenuation is a phenomenon whereby soils, sediments and groundwater are decontaminated by natural biological and chemical processes. Although the biological processes are slow, they play the biggest role in hydrocarbon decontamination. This is because we are very effective in degrading hydrocarbons. A technique you can apply is to stimulate these processes. We call this bioremediation. There are two methods: the addition of nutrients to help species like Martha and I grow, which is called biostimulation, and then there is the inoculation of microbial communities to a contaminated site, which is called bioaugmentation.
That's very interesting. So if I understand it correctly, these two methods can be used to improve hydrocarbon degradation.
That's absolutely right, Mr. White. Keep in mind that both methods can also be used simultaneously for improved results.
Well, thank you for your expertise, Dave. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we will leave you be.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on your show.
So, that was Dave. Live from an oil-contaminated site at the coast of Florida. Today's show has given you some insight into hydrocarbons and how they can be degraded by microbes. The application of the technology has huge potential in the waste processing and oil sectors. I hope we have opened your eyes to the marvelous world of anaerobes and their abilities to help clean up oil spills. Thank you for watching Day Talk, and I hope to see you next time for another interesting discussion.